Is the bank account holding your life savings built on a foundation of stolen gold? While the world celebrated the fall of the Third Reich in 1945, a silent ledger of blood money was already being laundered into the very institutions that rule global finance today. We are uncovering the dark truth behind the poison inheritance that funded modern banking giants. This is not just historical trivia. It is the hidden blueprint of the economic world you live in right now. Imagine a paper trail leading directly from the frozen, impenetrable vaults of Swiss mountains into the gleaming, glass boardrooms of Wall Street and the City of London. The post-war economic miracle taught in history books left out a terrifying chapter: the looted bullion, the untraceable paper credits, and the architects of genocide who traded their plunder for permanent seats at the global economic table. The greatest heist in human history did not end when the guns fell silent. It simply went corporate. Over the next 20 minutes, we will follow the blood-stained ledger to expose how stolen wealth became the secret venture capital for today's financial titans. The war ended, but the money stayed, and it is time to uncover where it went. To understand how plunder transformed into modern corporate equity, one must look at the chaotic months of early 1945. As Allied armies closed in on Germany from both sides, the leadership of the regime realized that physical conquest was inevitable. However, their financial strategists had already initiated a covert campaign known as Action Adlerflood, or Operation Eagle Flight. The objective was not to save the regime from military defeat, but to preserve its colossal industrial and financial capital for the post-war era. Tons of looted gold bars, bearer bonds, foreign currencies, and stolen corporate shares were secretly funneled out of central depositories. But physical gold is heavy and difficult to spend in a defeated nation under total Allied occupation. The real genius of the operation lay in converting physical wealth into invisible credit structures across neutral territories. Central to this massive laundering apparatus was an entity established years before the war: the Bank for International Settlements, located in Basel, Switzerland. Operating as a neutral clearinghouse for international central banks, this institution continued its secretive operations throughout the conflict, bridging financial transactions between warring nations. Through complex accounting entries and international wire transfers, stolen assets were systematically stripped of their origins, transformed into neutral ledger entries, and insulated from immediate post-war confiscation by the Allied powers. The transition from stolen physical gold to untraceable paper credits required a sophisticated network of front companies and shell entities. In neutral nations like Sweden, Switzerland, Spain, and Portugal, hundreds of corporate disguises were established virtually overnight. Stolen bullion was melted down in clandestine refineries, re-stamped with pre-war dates or neutral hallmarks, and deposited into private accounts. Once sanitized, these funds were converted into loans and capital investments for innocent-looking holding companies. American and British intelligence officers tracking the money trail after 1945 found themselves lost in a labyrinth of legal immunity and foreign banking secrecy. Every time investigators traced a suspicious corporate transaction, it ended at an anonymous private bank account protected by strict national secrecy statutes. The physical wealth had effectively vanished from the historical record, but its purchasing power remained completely intact. As Europe lay in ruins, needing massive infusions of capital for reconstruction, these sanitized financial reserves were positioned to re-enter the global market. They were no longer marked as the spoils of war, but as legitimate liquidity ready to fund the post-war industrial boom. To understand how this vast fortune survived the scrutiny of post-war tribunals, one must look deep into the Alpine fortresses of Switzerland. In 1934, long before the outbreak of total war in Europe, Swiss authorities enacted a revolutionary legal framework, the Banking Law of 1934. Article 47 made breaching bank secrecy a criminal offense, punishing tellers and bank directors who dared to disclose account details to foreign governments or tax investigators. While originally framed as a defense mechanism for privacy, this impenetrable shield created the ultimate haven for illicit capital. As war devastated the European continent, billions of dollars worth of gold bullion, rare artwork, and corporate securities flowed uninterrupted across the Swiss border. Deep beneath the mountain pine forests, fortified subterranean vaults held the spoils of displaced populations and occupied central banks. Behind closed doors, financial officers implemented complex anonymous account structures, replacing named deposits with simple numeric codes. When Allied investigators arrived in Basel and Zurich in 1945 demanding full access to the ledgers of blood money, they encountered an unbreakable wall of legal resistance. Swiss banking officials argued that absolute neutrality and client confidentiality superseded any international wartime directives, effectively freezing all inquiries in their tracks. This legal wall of resistance created a unique opportunity for post-war corporate restructuring. Wealthy industrial figures and financial brokers used these protected Swiss accounts to set up holding companies in Liechtenstein, Panama, and Luxembourg. Stolen assets were quietly sold off in secondary markets, converting physical gold into fresh, untraceable capital loans. These loans were then funneled back into West Germany and broader European industrial giants, acting as hidden venture capital during the era of Marshall Plan reconstruction. To the public eye, these emerging financial institutions and chemical conglomerates were rising from the ashes of war through pure free market resilience. In reality, their rapid resurgence was heavily subsidized by the very wealth that had been looted from conquered nations a decade prior. As decades passed, these anonymous accounts and shell companies were quietly absorbed into the private wealth management divisions of today's largest global banking entities. The original owners may have passed away or disappeared, but the underlying assets remained locked within the financial system, generating interest, backing investments, and forming a permanent, silent foundation under the global economic order. The corporate metamorphosis of this poison inheritance is perhaps the most unsettling chapter of modern economic history. When the dust finally settled over a fractured Europe, the massive chemical and industrial conglomerates that had powered the Axis war machine faced apparent dismantling. However, behind the public facade of post-war justice and accountability, a quiet and highly lucrative reintegration was already taking place. The very same high-ranking financial officers and industrial directors who had overseen vast operations utilizing forced labor were quietly absorbed into the boardrooms of the new, democratic Reconstruction era. Through complex legal settlements and the strategic injection of previously laundered Swiss funds, these tainted corporations were seamlessly reborn as the new pillars of the modern free market. They effectively traded the undeniable profits of slave labor and military exploitation for massive post-war Reconstruction grants. By the time the world entered the booming 1950s, the financial architects of the wartime economy had successfully rebranded themselves as visionary leaders of international industry. They transitioned from funding total war to directing the flow of global capital, ensuring that their immense, blood-stained fortunes were securely woven into the fabric of emerging global investment groups. Today, these exact same corporate lineages manage trillions of dollars in assets, their dark origins deliberately buried beneath decades of complex mergers, acquisitions, and institutional amnesia. The influence of this hidden wealth was not contained within the borders of Western Europe. Through clandestine financial conduits operating out of South America, Spain, and offshore island havens, laundered assets began a quiet migration into the heart of the Western economic sphere. These offshore entities acted as international capital buffers, acquiring significant holdings in mid-sized commercial banks, real estate portfolios, and shipping lines across the Americas. By purchasing legitimate, established firms, this laundered capital effectively acquired a clean identity and immediate access to the global banking network. As international trade expanded rapidly in the late 20th century, these legacy funds provided the vital liquidity required for major banking mergers. Small, regional institutions were systematically bought out by larger conglomerates that had been quietly seeded by these original offshore accounts. Furthermore, recent digital corporate register releases have begun to shed light on how complex parent-subsidiary structures maintain control over these historical assets for decades. What started as stolen wartime plunder evolved into the very foundation of modern asset management groups. The systemic risk and ethical compromise embedded within this framework were simply written off as the cost of global financial integration, leaving today's economic landscape built upon an unaccounted-for foundation of historical theft. 8 decades after the guns went silent across Europe, the world faces a profound moral and economic dilemma. Today, modern financial institutions operate on sophisticated algorithmic networks and global compliance frameworks, yet they remain anchored to a foundation built on unaccounted-for wartime plunder. As public archives, open and digital transparency exposes the ancestral paper trails of massive corporate portfolios, the demand for true accountability has never been louder. Yet, the systemic reality remains unchanged. The capital laundered in the wake of humanity's darkest chapter has become so deeply integrated into global markets that extracting it would mean destabilizing the very financial system we rely on every single day. This raises a disturbing question about the modern economic order we take for granted. If the stability of global finance is inextricably linked to the stolen wealth of the past, can true justice ever be served without collapsing the system itself? Have we collectively accepted a quiet pact of silence in exchange for economic security? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe history must be examined without compromise, subscribe and share this investigation.